Well, hello, dear friends. This is a lovely, wet, drippy kind of day here in the UK, and yeah, quite welcome. We've had a spell of really some very hot days, which have been just surprisingly humid, and also we've had this last week a couple of really, really, really windy days, which is unusual. We do have wind, but not as strong as this. So it's lovely to be indoors, and I must be honest, the first time I've put on a long sleeve shirt just so that I actually don't have to wear a cardigan. So I think the seasons are changing for sure. Anyway, I'm on a different project today. I do find often when I'm out and about that there are lots of things that I would like to put onto paper. So I might see a nice flower, or I might have a leaf I'd want to draw, or just a scene of some boats I'm passing. And it's very difficult when you are trying to have something that's compact to put into your bag. So when I was in South Africa, I used to make a lot of these little journals. Let me just grab some and I'll show you. So I used to make these little journals with hand decorated papers inside and out. I made the covers from scratch. I made all the signatures myself, and then I bound the lot together. So you'll see that they all had different styles, and I used to sell these at markets. But I did bring with me a couple of extra covers, and I'm wanting just to put some art paper into those so that I can actually just have them on hand for when I'm out and about. And I'm going to use mixed media paper today. So I have done videos in the past where I've shown you how to make the covers, and I'll link those in the description box so that you can have a look at that if you're interested. But essentially what you have are two pieces of card for the cover with a little gap in between, and then a piece of card for making the spine, and then you would cover each section and then join them all together with this bookbinder's cloth. Or if you wanted something a little bit more shabby, you could do something like a piece of cotton material or something that you'd cut, but it might have some raggedy edges. So that's the basis of my book. And then I would obviously need to cover the inside cover. So traditionally what you would do would be to put your signatures in and then cover them with a nice cover page inside, and join that from the cover onto your signatures so that it gives it a nice finish. But because I'm actually wanting to be able to take these little sketches or paintings out of my book, I'm just going to tie them together so that I can remove them, and I also want them to be able to lie flat. So let's have a look at the materials that I've got. I've got my cover that's ready made. I've got some options here. I've got a piece of thin elastic that I could use for tying, and I have also got a nice piece of ribbon. I'm going to be working with a glue stick today, but you could use something like Elmer's glue or one of the watercraft glues, but you would just need to have the drying time. I'm going to need a pencil and a ruler. I'm going to need some paper, and I'll choose one just now that I'm going to use to cover the inside of my book with. And then I have this mixed media paper. Now unfortunately I can't show you the cover because my darling little granddaughter decided that she loved painting, and being a painter myself, I know you can't paint on just any kind of paper because it buckles. So she went off with the bulk of my mixed media pad and just left me with a few sheets, which is fine. I've ordered some more, but I do have these. So these are 42 centimeters by 30 centimeters, and they're about 300 GSM in weight. I think that's correct as my memory serves me, but the measurements are correct. So those are the papers and things that I'm going to actually need. And then I will also need to make use of my paper trimmer, which I've got here, or alternatively, if you don't have a paper trimmer, you could use a cutting mat and a craft knife. That works just as well. And just have a nice metal ruler so that you don't nick into your knife at all while you're working. So I've got to choose a cover that will go with this. So the paper is largely lavender. I've pulled out a couple of different colors here, some blues, and we'll just have a look through them. So that is quite nice, but it keeps the cover pretty dark. That I don't like with it. That's a handmade paper. I'm not too fond of that one. So let's move those out the way. And it's always good if you've got a few selections just to have some at hand. You can just play around with it. That I feel is just going to be too much lavender. And then I've got this lovely sort of mottled piece of paper. I could use that, but I just feel it's going to be a little bit thin when I come to glue. And possibly this is going to be my choice, just to have the spots, so it'll be a little bit fun on the inside and a little bit more traditional on the outside. So I'm going to need to measure now how much I need to cover it. And when you're measuring to cover the inside of your cover, you're normally wanting to go about 1/2 centimeter smaller on either side, just so that you've got about 1/4 centimeter around the edges. So I'm going to quickly just measure and cut this piece of paper so that we can glue this in, and I'll show you how we actually go about doing that. So I need my strip that's going to go from the one side of the cover across the other side, so the long length of this, which is actually the width, I need that to be 10.5 centimeters wide. So I've got 10, there's a half, I'm measuring up here, line this up, put that down, and just run the blade through. So let's just check our measurements against what we have on the book. And this is scrapbooking paper, so it has a nice sort of substantive weight to it. Right, so if I look at this and I'm going to fold it, that actually gives me quite a nice weight. Scrapbooking papers are generally just about 30.5 centimeters wide, or square should I say, so that has actually worked out perfectly well. So I'm going to just pack away the guillotine and we'll glue this in. So I'm going to fold this in half so that I have, oh, do I want to do that? No, I don't. I'm going to leave it. So I've got a piece of scrap paper that I've put here, and as I say, I'm going to just use a dry glue stick, just because this will dry more quickly. And this is a Scotch one, and I quite like their brand because I find it's not too sticky as in gunky, but does adhere well. And you want to make sure that you're well covered. So the way to test that is to put your glue on, then tilt it to the light, and where your glue is wet, it'll reflect the light. I don't know if you can see that. And where there are dry spots, like there's one just about here, you'll see that it looks matte, and then you can come back in and make sure that you have covered all of the areas. I'm just going to flip this around to do the other side. Edges are important. You want to get right into the corners wherever possible. And you can also just rub your glue stick along the length and then go backwards and forwards along the width, just in case you've missed something. Right, so I'm going to move my sticky backing paper away, and now we're going to just position this over the cover. I'm wanting to have more or less an equidistant frame, and then rub that in place. Push down the corners. Okay, now you will have noticed that when I was showing you the inside cover, there were those two little gaps on either side of where I'd placed the card for the spine, and that's just to really allow you to actually bend the book. So I had originally thought of bending it in half, but on second thoughts I'm just going to bend it now as the book lies, so I'll have two bends there to make the cover. So even though the glue is wet, I've just made a slight impression there, and then I'm going to leave this to dry before I come back to it. So that's going to go to one side. The next thing that we're going to need to do is decide on how we're going to cut our mixed media paper, which is what I've got here, in preparation for doing our little book and have the pages. So you'll see on the mixed media paper, one side is smooth and the other side has a little bit of a texture which is rough. It's called a bit of tooth, which just gives you a nice sort of grip if you're working with pastels and things like that. And also with watercolors, it actually changes how the paint behaves from one side of the paper to the other. So my paper is 42 centimeters by 30, and I need this to be yeah, my pages, I think I said 10. Let me just double check. Yeah, 10.5. Okay, so I'm just going to cut some strips here. Let's just see. 10.5. Sorry, I'm just thinking out aloud here. About 30. Yeah, so I'm going to use the width, which is 30, to do the strip there. So essentially I'm going to be cutting my pages like that, because that's how it's going to fit in the book. And then I'm going to measure these. Have I gone off camera? Yeah, an old trick of mine. I'm going to measure here 10.5, and then I will cut it. So this will be across my width. So let's take the edge here, which is nice. I'm going to need a couple of pages, so 2 times 10.5 is 21. So I'm going to mark my paper like that. And you want to be as accurate as possible. So this is quite nice, because out of a 42 centimeter width, I'm actually going to get 4 strips of paper, which will give me 8 sides that I can actually work on. So that's actually pretty decent. Right, so I'll go and cut those and then show you what the strips look like. Okay, so we have a whole lot of strips now that I've cut. I've folded some of them, and I've just simply made it so that the fold shows the textured surface on the outside edge. Now, one of the things that happens when you are stacking papers together to make a signature is that some of the papers will stick out and not be completely straight on the edge. And that's just simply because the fold in the center here creates a little bit of bulk, and it does tend to make your papers not line up absolutely straight. So if you were making a normal book, you would probably want to trim those so that it actually looks neat. But because I want these pages to be open flat when I'm painting or drawing, and I want to be able to take them out the book and use them in other projects, I'm not going to trim these down, because I don't want each page to be a little bit shorter. I do have one little piece of card which is slightly less that I had as an offcut, and I'm also going to just pop that into my book as so. And then what you want to do is to use your hands just to line all your pages up as closely as possible, and then center them. You can see here that they're not quite square in the middle, so try and push them down just a little bit. It's not going to be 100%. Right, that's more or less okay. And then I'm going to just hold those in place, if I can find a clip, like that. Nice clip. Yep, and I think I'll just use some ribbon to tie this together. So if I take my ribbon from the inside round the outside, and this is just a double-sided satin ribbon, it's really a lovely ribbon to work with. It was difficult to get hold of at one point in South Africa, but I did manage to get a reel, so I was really happy. I'm just going to pull this here and just tie a bow, because as I said, I do want to be able to take my pages out. And this is really just a working little book. It's not for any other purpose. So I can slide the bow around to the side, and I can trim the tail if I want to. But now when I come to actually use my little book, I'm actually able to move the pages so that they can lie flat. Or if I wanted to, I could actually quite easily just slide the little page out, work on it, slide it back in, and then once this goes back into my bag with my little travel set of watercolor paints and my pencil, I've actually got quite a nice neat cover that will protect all my pages. So there you go, nice easy way to make a little travel journal, and I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, please give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing to my channel, and leave any comments. Have you tried this before? Have you done something different? I'd love to know. Bye for now.